Welcome in to Locked On Knicks, and we are continuing with our September mailbag. Gavin, what are we getting into today?
Oh, a whole lot of good stuff, Alex. First, we start off the discussion with what is the going rate for star players today and how does it impact the New York Knicks? Then we talk about potential expansion to Las Vegas, and we culminate our episode by each picking a new co-host. Controversy about to start on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you guys making us a part of your daily routine. I am Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. He is Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster, and we are getting into more mailbag questions today. I'll throw out the reminder again, if you're listening to this and you didn't ask us a mailbag question and you want to ask us one, feel free to ask one in the YouTube comments. You could go find the tweet or just send us a tweet at Locked On Knicks. Or we have had some questions come in via email. You can always hit us up, lockedonnicks@gmail.com, if you want to send us an email and get a question in that way. Whatever you want to do, we'll continue taking questions the whole rest of the month because the heck else are we going to talk about at this point in the offseason, post Donovan Mitchell trade and all that? So I'll get to our first question, though. And actually, the first person asked us our first two questions today. So first one comes from Buy Low, Sell High at swing_trade55. They want to know, hi, Gavin and Alex. Hello, swing trade 55, Buy Low, Sell High. General NBA question for you. I think most of us thought Minnie and Utah's trades were an anomaly, but didn't think the Minnie and Utah trade was an anomaly, but didn't this Cleveland and Utah trade just validate the going rate for just a star? Is now 4 or 5 number one picks plus matching salary. Scary thought. Gavin, I don't know for sure that it fully validated that. I mean, I will say first off, like the Cleveland and Utah for Mitchell was ultimately 3 unprotected firsts and 2 swaps, which, unless things go terribly wrong for the Cavs, probably won't convey. I would imagine that Utah is going to be bad enough for long enough that their own picks are going to be worse than Cleveland's, who now have Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and Allen all locked up for the foreseeable future, and they're all young, either in their prime or about to enter their prime, or about to enter their second year with loads of potential in front of them. Like, I think the Cavs are going to be a force for a while. So I really look at that more as just 3 unprotected first round picks. The Minnesota and Utah trade, kind of the same deal, right? Wasn't that ultimately the haul there too, or did they give up 4 unprotected ones and like 1 swap? I forget what the split was there, but I think swaps, should be looked at as what they are. It's almost like a protected first round pick. Like, you're only really benefiting the team that has that swap if you are unnaturally bad compared to what you're supposed to be. So I don't know if I fully agree with the assessment from Buy Low, Sell High that the market has been set at 4 or 5 first round picks, considering the amount of swaps that were used in those deals.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. I mean, look, you can't trade more than 4 of your own first round picks in a trade anyways, unless I'm completely misremembering that rule. So that is by definition the max. And if you're a team like the Knicks and you have other teams' first round picks, then you can start throwing in more. There have been situations in the past where the swaps have turned out to be extraordinarily valuable, most famously in the Paul Pierce KG trade to the Nets, as I think it was a swap that got one of Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. The other one was just one of the picks going off in that trade. But Alex, I don't know. I was interested in this question more in like a big picture sense in terms of, I guess, is this, do we think that this is going to be the star market going forward? Because I mean, to me, like these weren't really trendsetters. Like, this sort of just has been the trend the last couple of years. You can go back and look. The Harden trade, I think, was 4 firsts and 3 swaps plus 2 really good young players in Jared Allen and Karis LeVert. The Anthony Davis trade was 3 firsts, 1 swap, 2 different fairly recent number 2 picks in not second round picks, number 2 picks in the whole draft in Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball, and a really good young role player in Josh Hart. And then, yeah, you have the Mitchell trade and the Gobert trade. I mean, you can even flash to the most recent Harden trade where his value was really depleted. And in that case, it was just Ben Simmons and a couple of guys thrown in. But for players that are deemed at the time all NBA level talents, like I don't see this changing. I don't think there's a world where this is any different, but I don't think I see anything wrong with that. It's sort of or at least it generally has been a win-win for teams making those types of deals. Like, I mean, you look at like the Lakers Pelicans trade, I think is kind of the ultimate example of that. The Lakers won a championship, and with better management, like a GM that would have picked DeMar DeRozan over Russell Westbrook, like probably is still a contender as of right now. And you look in New Orleans, and we just did a whole series of episodes on it. They have one of the brightest futures in the entire NBA. And then you can even look at Brooklyn and Houston and say, obviously it didn't work out in Brooklyn, but as we noted when Doug Norrie came on the podcast, the Nets had a excellent chance to go and win an NBA championship. And barring injuries, I think we can all say they would have won the championship. They almost beat the team that did win the title with 2 of those guys out. And the Rockets look like they have one of the brighter futures in the NBA, and they have $1 million picks to deal with. They have a couple young stars. So I haven't seen enough negative repercussions on either side of these types of deals that I think anything is going to shift in the near future. The big question that I have going forward is, do you see a world, especially when that extra TV money comes flooding in, everyone is focused on that big summer of 2025 where we get Jason Tatum, Jamal Murray, I believe, and a couple of other studs as free agents. Do you think there's a world where free agency comes back, or do you think this is what happens where guys sign extensions for the max amount of money and then demand out for the foreseeable future?
I don't know. I mean, I guess we're just going to have to see how things progress. Like, I do think, I was going to say too, I think there's something to be said for like the Mitchell trade, I think actually sort of reset the market in a weird way. Like, I think with the way that people were talking when the deal was first getting discussed with the Knicks, it was like, you know, oh, the Knicks are going to have to give up 7 cumulative first round picks, including, you know, some protected ones just to get this deal done. Because look at what Gobert just got. I did look it up. It was 4 firsts unprotected and 1 swap. Like, look at what they just gave up. You know, that means that Mitchell's going to be worth so much more because he's a shot creator or whatever. Like, I think revisiting what I was just saying a second ago, like, I think the Gobert trade set the market higher and the Mitchell trade just kind of brought it back to where it's been. Because Mitchell's not as good as those guys you mentioned, as, you know, Paul George, Anthony Davis, James Harden, etc. And he didn't get as big of a package as those guys got. Like, he fetched a package that's about in line with a star of his caliber, like about what the Knicks paid for Melo, honestly. You know what I mean? And you could say the Melo's probably a similar type player, guy from the, you know, the Rockies, you know, out there, and you know, that hadn't really accomplished much in the playoffs at that point. There was a supremely talented scorer that maybe had some question marks about if he could be the number 1 guy on a team that had like actual title aspirations. Like, there you go. I mean, that's basically what they cost. So to answer your other question though, as far as if free agency is going to make a comeback, I don't know if free agency has ever fully gone away. Like, we keep talking about it, and it's almost like all the talk of like, oh, the big man is dead. You know, it's like, that's just like the hot button thing. I do think that more guys are starting to take advantage of the system as far as, you know, as far as taking the extension, demanding out later, getting themselves more money that way. But I think what's ultimately happening is, I mean, we sort of just saw it with Leon Rose, like saying no to this Mitchell trade, is that at a certain point, teams are going to just start saying no. And then these teams that have these guys that got signed, like, there might be a star or two that just gets forced to play out his contract with the team that he signed his contract with because they can't find someone willing to pay the price that has been set by the market. That might serve as a cautionary tale. I don't know if that's going to end up happening at some point or when that might end up happening, but that would be the thing that would all of a sudden reset guys' brains a bit and be like, all right, well, if I actually want to control my own destiny, I guess I can't sign a 5-year contract that I don't technically have any power to get out of or, you know, pick a destination or whatever. And, they'll start saying, all right, well, I'll start leaving money on the table again, especially with the obscene amount of money, as you alluded to, that's going to be available once that new TV deal comes through. I think it should be okay for these guys. And they'll ultimately say, like, fine, I can't have a $400 million contract on an extension. I guess I'll just take a $300 million contract, signed in free agency, which is not a small amount of money to leave on the table, but maybe worth it to them to pick their preferred destination. Or the opposite might happen. And because it's such an exorbitant sum of money now, like because 15% or 20% or whatever per year becomes that much more, maybe we'll even see players lean further into the contract extension thing if the league doesn't in their next CBA scale back the amount that like homegrown talent is allowed to be paid on their original team or whatever, which is what we've seen now, where teams get this ability to give a guy, instead of like 35 million a year, as high as like 50 million a year now on an extension versus just a free agent contract. So that gap will only grow bigger. And so I guess there's two schools of thought. Either the money will get so huge that players will say, fine, what's 100 million less when I'm already making 300 million? Or the money will be so huge that players will be like, no freaking way am I leaving $100 million on the table, because that's so much money. I'm taking my full value and I'll keep asking out, even if it costs teams way more assets to get me down the line, to get me traded out.
Yeah. I want to get into how like the history of free agency influencing titles, because I know this is kind of a tangent off the initial question, but it's interesting to me because if you actually go through NBA history, there isn't really an insane track record of it. But before we do that, I got to remind everyone about BetOnline.net. They're your number one source for all your pro and college betting needs and sports info this season. You can find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Alex, I'll throw this to you. Should people still be throwing money behind your Mets to win the NL East?
Yes, I am holding on hope, or holding out hope. I'm really hoping that they can pull it out. A little less confident than I was maybe a month ago, but I think they can still do it. The Braves got to cool off sometime. The Mets are still playing good. They've been consistent. Braves just got to hit a brick wall at some point. That's all that's got to happen.
The trumpets are not playing quite as loud, but head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. But first, I wanted to remind you of one more cool thing. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Which NBA player moves the betting line the most this season? Locked On and the BetOnline odds makers present the NBA top 50 most valuable players starting on September 19th. You can find it on Locked On NBA, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. And with that, we are back on Locked On Knicks. Now, I just want to, before we get into the second question from our guy, buy low, sell high, I just wanted to wrap up this conversation with a look historically at the impact free agency has made, because I always think it gets a little overblown throughout NBA history. And there's really only like a handful, and by a handful, I mean you can count them on one hand, of free agency moves in NBA history that have made a difference in terms of winning a title. The Golden State Warriors, I would say the big move that elevated that team was trading for Andrew Wiggins. The Milwaukee Bucks, what pushed them over the top was trading Drew Holiday. Flashback to 2020, the Los Angeles Lakers, their big move was trading for Anthony Davis. 2019 champions, Toronto Raptors, their big move, trading for Kawhi Leonard. 17-18, the Cleveland Cavaliers, it was signing Kevin Durant. The Golden State Warriors, it was signing Kevin Durant. The Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016, it was signing LeBron James. The Warriors in 2015, it was all homegrown talent. The Spurs, it was all homegrown talent. And then you cut back to the Heat as really the one other team in the 2010s who was primarily driven by free agent signings. Of course, that was the big three of Chris Bosh, LeBron James, and Dwayne Wade. That's probably the first time anyone's ever said Chris Bosh is the first of those three names. I can go on and on and on. You can cut back to like the Lakers in the early 2000s. That was Shaq signing as a free agent. But all that is to say, Alex, I feel like trades and homegrown talent shape champions, a little bit more than free agency does. So while it's certainly a new-ish trend in the NBA it's definitely a new trend that guys are taking these extensions and forcing their way out really early. I don't think it's this revolutionary thing that the players capable of shaping championships rarely move teams through free agency.
Yeah, I think ultimately it could just be summed up as in the NBA, good asset management wins you championships. That's it. You just got to strike when the iron's hot, whether that's the right trade or the right signing to push you over the edge. Because, there's been other, you could argue like getting like Andre Iguodala, was that like the move that first pushed the Warriors over the edge to win the championship? Like, Kevin Durant obviously was what spurred those other championships. They were obviously capable of winning it prior to getting him. That was a free agent move. Like, yeah, I'm with you though. I do think usually it ends up being that big trade because you build up the core through the draft and free agency. And then the trade is kind of like where you're taking all these pieces saying, all right, which ones fit and which ones don't. And the ones, some of the ones that don't, we're going to find a way to trade into a piece that does fit to ultimately complete this team and make it ready to go and go run on a championship run. Of course, you also just have to end up with a generational player in this day and age too, by and large. Like, you got to have, most of the title teams have been like Steph Curry or LeBron James in the last 15 years,
I mean,
so
really the last 60 years. It's like, it's so,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, a couple of exceptions here and there, but it's star driven.
Magic, Bird, Jordan. Yeah. Like, Shaq, Kobe, I mean, you gotta have a generational player at some point too. So hopefully the Knicks can secure one of them. But I want to get to the other part of buy low, sell highs questions here. And the second question is, how will teams like the Knicks be able to compete with Vegas for free agents? This is, of course, coming on the heels of like there's a report that the NBA is considering expansion soon, which, if I recall, it's most likely going to be Seattle getting a team back and then Vegas getting a team as well, which I think would be great, honestly. Which we could probably do a whole other pod on that if it ever goes through. But like, I think it would be great to move a couple of Western Conference teams to the Eastern Conference, like New Orleans and Memphis, that are basically on the East. Anyway, so if a team comes up in Vegas, how would the Knicks be able to compete with Vegas for free agents? Seems impossible in the short time Vegas should that it seems impossible that in a short time Vegas should be an NBA dynasty. Young, wealthy stars and superstar players will want to be there. Celebs, women, nightlife. Many would take less to be there, question mark. All the more reason why the Knicks need to go the route Golden State did to draft well, develop, and build so the free agents will come, in my opinion. I would push back on this a little bit. I don't think Vegas is going to be some gigantic free agent draw. Like, Vegas is a vacation town. Guys can go there during the off season. Like, I would say, if anything, players love to talk about how they lock in during the season. So, I don't think players would be frequenting the Strip during the NBA season unless we get like a Dennis Rodman redux, But
James Harden might be.
James Harden maybe. Harden might be drawn there. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I feel like most players, they try to like lock in during the season and get away from those distractions, not immerse themselves in it. So if players ultimately sign with Vegas in the future, if there is a team there, they probably wouldn't be living like in a penthouse in the Bellagio anyway. They'd probably be living somewhere on the outskirts of town with a gym close by to go practice at, and hopefully a nice practice facility just outside the city limits too, that they would work out at. I don't know. I mean, I don't really think that they're going to be some huge draw. We mentioned this, you and I were talking about this question briefly before the show, and you mentioned too, like, it's not like the Las Vegas Raiders are suddenly like getting every free agent now or something. I mean, they did trade for Devontae Adams, but that was a trade. So is what it is there. I guess, you still got to give something up to get something. And it's not like they've gotten a ton of free agents since they moved there a couple years ago. Also, the Vegas Golden Knights in hockey, they, if I remember right, made it to the Stanley Cup their very first season. It was like one of their first two. And when they made it, though, it was just because they knocked it out of the park with the expansion draft and the actual draft and just put together a really good team. It wasn't because they like signed a ton of free agents or something. So I don't really look at Vegas as like a sure. I don't think they're going to take away any free agents from New York, Chicago, Miami, or Los Angeles. Like, I think those are still the marquee cities that most players are going to flock to. And I don't think Vegas like throws a huge monkey wrench into that plan.
Yeah, look, I'm not in the NBA, and apologies to all of our Vegas Knicks fans, but I'm just going to throw this out there. Vegas kind of sucks. Like you do it once, it's exciting, it's fun. I get it. Maybe some people would say the same thing about New York.
I mean, it's definitely a playground. If you have millions upon millions of dollars, it's a playground. Like it is. I can imagine as an NBA player to go there for like a week and go crazy. It's probably a lot of fun.
It's not sustainable. Is my point. Though.
No,
like
exactly.
You're going to burn out very, very quickly. Being there.
Exactly.
So I'm out on Vegas. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I don't really see that either. I would personally, Seattle would be more appealing for me, but I don't think either one of those teams would threaten the Knicks. Oh yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I think with Seattle too, the other thing is like if you're doing Vegas, whatever, it's just some new expansion team. But like I could see Seattle being more of a draw too. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle gets a team in like 2 years. If Kevin Durant like gets through his contract with the Nets and is like, I'm signing a retirement deal with the Sonics as a way to like say sorry that we got moved after my 1 year there to Oklahoma City. You know, like I feel like there would be more of a appeal there in the fact that like Seattle already has NBA history and would be getting a new team. It would be like a redemption arc. You could be like, I'm the guy that like brought the Seattle Supersonics back, like whatever. I feel like they would have more draw than Vegas would, honestly, because anybody can go vacation in Vegas, but like, you know, I don't think it's a great place to live year round, honestly. And again, apologies to anyone that does live there. I'm sure it's fine enough. I just don't think it would be like massively appealing.
Yeah, and Seattle also does have just produces so much talent. Like you'd get guys like DeJounte Murray and Paolo Banchero. I mean, potentially there'd be an interesting going home narrative there. All right, let's take one final break. Come back for one final tantalizing question. If we could each pick a new co-host, who would we pick and why? That next on Locked On Knicks. All right, Alex, it's time. The question everyone was waiting for comes from Knicks Will Rise at Knicks Will Rise, and he or she wants to know, at the risk of starting a civil war, if you each had to pick a replacement for your Locked On Knicks co-host, and you could choose from any national, local, or freelance content creator, whom would you choose and why? I mean, if I get a pick of anyone, Alex, I think I'd have to go national. I've made no bones about it. I'm a huge fan of Zach Lowe. I think he's just the best at this. So that would be really cool. But honestly, even though I would probably get infuriated with him, and I think a lot of his takes are stupid, it would be fun to do this with Stephen A. Smith every day. I mean, there's certainly a financial component that's very appealing. No offense to either of us. He's a little bit more of a Q rating. So I think it's possible we get more subscribers, but I think we tend to agree on a lot of stuff. So I kind of like the idea of having someone who I'm pretty sure I would have like 80% of the time opposite opinions as.
Yeah. And I think you and I used to be more in that space. And over time, we've gotten too copacetic.
Yeah. A little group mind going on.
Yeah. We definitely used to disagree more, I think. And that did make for good podcasting. We still do sometimes, but it's so amicable. It's like we both just come to the end and we're like, well, I see your side of the coin too.
You raised some good points.
You made a great point. You know what?
Look, as long as we both hate Vegas, it's fine.
Yeah. We can both agree Vegas sucks. No, I'm so sorry to anyone that lives in Vegas. I mean, if I was looking at it from a perspective of pure like entertainment value / like being able to make the show way bigger and thus make it so maybe it could become my only job or something. Yeah, someone like Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless or Shannon Sharp would be pretty fun. I think Shannon Sharp is pretty hilarious. He would be pretty funny. I mean, Stephen A. though comes with the guise of being a Knicks fan. Even if I don't know if I fully believe that. I think he's a Knicks fan as far as it lets him yell about the Knicks on TV, because it seems like he doesn't pay attention to anything, the way that he speaks about things. But again, that would make for good podcasting, to have him spouting off his stupid opinions all day and being able to just like squash them and then listen to him scream for a minute. I think though, if I was just going to pick from like a personal comfort level of like someone I would feel like getting on with every day and talking with, it would be like, if not you, because I think that we've developed a great rapport over the years and I consider you a friend now and we have a great time on the show. I would go with someone else that we talk to fairly often, someone that I talk to fairly often, like maybe Schwinn, if I could convince him to not curse all the time, because we're not allowed to do that anymore on here. Might be a tall order though. So if he wasn't down for that, I mean, again, it would be like we're talking like I can pull somebody away from anything that they're doing otherwise. Like I love talking with Macri, so I'd love to have Macri on here. I'd be like, Macri, just shut down your podcast.
Yeah, that
Come,
would really, you tank all the competition. Like, I feel like there would be like antitrust investigations if they brought Macri in.
Did Alex use his dream draft pick to take down Knicks Film School and fold them into Locked On Knicks?
Yeah, corner 80% of the Knicks podcast market.
Yeah. But like Macri, I'd love my co-hosts from Knicks mail.bag on the Strickland pods, either Zach DeLizio or Matt Weiss. I like both of them. I don't know if Matt would want to commit to doing that many days. I don't know if Zach would want to commit to doing that many days either. It would have to be someone who would be okay with doing the schedule that we do too, which is a tall order. Yeah. So maybe Stephen A is getting more points that way because he does a lot of content. So, but I don't know if we could quite afford his $8 million price tag or whatever it is he makes. So
look, that's on David Locke. It's not on us.
That's on Locke. That's not on me. I'll just be like, David, just make sure I get half of whatever he gets. And I could live on $4 million a year, I guess.
I'll survive. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, other than not to leave anybody else out, they're probably like, what's nice about this overall Knicks community that's kind of all come up together, like CP, the franchise, and Knicks Fan TV too. Like, I would love to do a show with him. Like, there's like at least probably a dozen guys that, like, if you told me like, okay, you have to do a podcast with this guy 5 days a week, I'd be like, all right, cool. Like that can be fun.
No big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's plenty of guys I would take. I don't really have like a dream choice, honestly, because I don't know that I'd want to do it with like one of the beat writers or whatever. I feel like that would be kind of boring. In all honesty, we have them on, we have our little interviews with them, but I don't know how. Maybe the rapport would grow over time. Maybe doing a 5-day-a-week podcast with Berman could be entertaining. Try to think, but like nationally, there's not too many people I would care to talk about the Knicks with every day because I generally hate the opinions that national people have about the Knicks all the time. Maybe I should go celeb. Oh, honestly, why did I not think of this? The answer would probably be Clyde. Do a podcast with Clyde 5 days a week. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I feel like Breen would be cool, but like any of his insults would just be so subtle. Like I'd be like, "You want to say that again, Mike?" He'd be like, "Nope, I said what I said." Yeah, he would be great. Yeah.
My only worry with Clyde too is that, sorry, and then I'll let you throw your other one in. My only worry with Clyde is that, like, if we would ever get him on the pod, it would be so special and so awesome and like a don't wash your hands moment, like oh my God, I can't, like, I'm never washing my microphone again. Like Clyde graced me with his presence when I was talking on this microphone or whatever. But like
you wash your microphone
all the time. Yeah, obviously.
You're not, brother.
you think that spit guard thing, isn't catching spit? No, but like, I wonder if over time, and I mean, it doesn't seem like it has for Breen, but I wonder if over time it would lose its luster in the sense of like when you're doing it with him every single day. Like I wouldn't want to ever take for granted getting to like share a screen with Clyde. So that would worry me a little bit, that eventually I'd start taking it for granted. So maybe that would just be like, he would be my dream recurring guest to come on like twice a year or something, maybe.
Yeah. I was going to quickly, I'm doing Entourage rewatch right now. So Jerry Ferrara, high on my list of celebrity Knicks fans. That would be cool to come on. Yeah. I mean, everyone you listed in the community, guys like Prez, Benji, Dallas, like there's, as we said, we could go on all day. There's a million people that we're lucky enough to have on this pod all the time. And it's kind of nice that we get to do it that way because you never like take anyone for granted. Like every time we have someone on like that, it always ends up being interesting and special and kind of its own thing. But yeah, that's it for this edition of Locked On Knicks. We'll certainly be back at least once, maybe 2 more times this week. So stay tuned. But until next time, until Stephen A cashes that check, he's Alex. I'm Gavin. We'll talk to you soon. Peace out.